For the n-Lorem Foundation, N of 1 doesn't mean alone because every patient matters. Hope for nano-rare patients and their families has never been more within reach. Visit n-Lorem.org today to donate and make hope possible. This episode of the n-Lorem Patient Empowerment Program podcast is graciously sponsored by ChemGenes, where advancing science is their purpose and helping people is their passion. Since 1981, ChemGenes has been redefining the boundaries of scientific discovery, development, and commercialization by manufacturing and supplying the broadest range of nucleic acid chemistries available in today's market.
Hello and welcome to the n-Lorem podcast, the only podcast series focused exclusively on the needs of nano-rare patients and their families. I'm Stan Crook. I'm your host, and I'm the founder, chairman, and CEO of n-Lorem. And today we have two very special guests, Susan and Grace Hoyt. Susan is Director of Publications at the Institute for Trial Advocacy, and Grace just confirmed for me that she's a sophomore in high school. So Susan, Grace, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Good. I think before we get formally underway, I probably need to take a step back and help our audience understand the name of the gene that's a problem for Grace and what all that actually means. So give me a minute here, and then we'll get on it. Okay. So just for background, genes are often named by the people who discover them, and that's one of the joys of being a scientist. You get to name things, okay? And that means that genes often have more than one name, and sometimes the genes have a name that's very misleading, and that is the case with Grace's problem gene. This gene is called feline leukemia virus C receptor 1. That's because the scientist who discovered this protein that the gene makes was interested in feline leukemia virus. It turns out that feline leukemia virus hijacks a protein that's in the cell surface and also in the membrane of mitochondria to get into cells. So Grace does not have feline leukemia. That's good news. But she does have a significant mutation in this gene, and that means that this protein doesn't work right. And what this protein actually does for a living is it controls the amount of heme in cells. Okay, so what's heme? Heme is an iron binding molecule. It stores iron for use. And iron, of course, is a critical element, especially in energy, in the making of energy. So if you have too little iron, of course, that's a problem. If you have too much iron in a cell, that's an even bigger problem because too much iron can be very, very toxic. Naturally, the tissues that use the most energy are at the greatest risk. So what are the tissues that use the most energy? The central nervous system and the retina. Your retina was constantly transducing light energy into chemical energy. And of course, your brain is working all the time, probably more than you want it to some days. And so Grace has a mutation in this gene that produces a protein that regulates heme concentrations, or said another way, iron concentration in cells. And as a result, she has had lifelong issues with central nervous system function and with her retinal function. That is, I saw that. You're already bored.
Actually, no, I'm not bored. I love biology.
Okay. Well, people often get bored when I talk, so I'm used to that. Okay. So, in any event, um, among Grace's problems is progressive loss of vision. And she also has significant central nervous system issues as well. But we'll come to all of that in a little bit. But what the team decided to do first was to treat her eyes to prevent any further loss of vision, because loss of vision for Grace is an even bigger catastrophe than loss of vision for just other people. So anyway, with that background, welcome everybody. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great background.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry I bored you.
Yeah, you just told me that I have cat virus. Technically, I don't have cat virus, but I have cat genes.
We're pretty sure she's not a cat. 90-something% sure.
You sure?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I do cat things.
Okay.
It's good to know what you're not as well as what you are, I guess. So, why don't we begin? I think with you, Susan, and can you describe Grace's problems that she's had throughout her life?
Yeah, it actually started before she was even born. When we went in for our level 2 ultrasound when I was 4 or 5 months pregnant, her kidneys were echogenic, which means bright as bone, which means you could really see them very well on the ultrasound. You're not supposed to be able to see them, apparently. I didn't know that at the time, but you could see them very clearly. And so we started following with a maternal fetal medicine specialist, and had ultrasounds every month, and the kidneys resolved, and then Grace turned breech, sideways breech, transverse breech, and she just could not figure out what was going on. She said, I am just kicking myself because this is a classic sign that there's something wrong, but I can't figure out what it is. And it turns out Grace is really rare. Of course, she couldn't figure it out because it took years and teams of doctors to even get there. When Grace was born, she breathed very loudly. She had what's called tracheomalacia, and her trachea was not strong enough to support her breathing, and so she honked every time she breathed out. And the doctors assured us, there's nothing wrong. It's not going to hurt her. It'll resolve with time. And so, we took her home. And she continued to honk for several months, and then that resolved. And then she started getting pneumonia. She got RSV at 7 or 8 months, and it turned into pneumonia. She then had pneumonia 5 times before her 2nd birthday. And for one of those, she ended up being admitted because it was the same spot on her lungs that continued to get infected, and they were worried that it was some sort of a cancer. What we know now is that Grace gets infections and they stick around. They're really hard to clear for her. So she finally got to the point where she was getting past the pneumonia stage, and then she started having wounds on her fingers. She would have little circular wounds on the tips of her fingers or very deep cuts on the creases of her fingers. And she was in daycare, and we would go back and forth with our daycare person, what happened? And she would say, well, she didn't cry. Nothing happened here. We said, well, she didn't cry here either, so nothing happened. And we went back and forth for quite a while. When she was about 18 or 20 months old, it was Easter. We had 2 kids at this time. And we had given them both baths and put them straight to bed, got up the next day, put them in their cute little brand new Easter clothes. She had a very pretty dress with a brand new white sweater. And while we were sitting there, she was sitting on my lap, and I looked over, and there was this strange rust-colored spot on her brand new white sweater. Couldn't figure out what that was. And then I looked, and there was a cut about a quarter of the way through her index finger on the crease. And we racked our brains. We knew she hadn't been around anything sharp. We knew where she had been the whole time. We knew there was no chance she could have gotten anything sharp. And it finally occurred to us that it was her little teeth, her little baby teeth, that were sharp enough to do that. she was in physical therapy at the time because she had gross motor delays. She never met her gross motor milestones before she started having physical therapy. And so I was talking to her physical therapist about it, maybe about a week later, and she said, "Do you think she can feel pain?" And I said, "Yeah, of course she can. Everybody feels pain." And then we started thinking about it and looking back, at times there were things that she did. She used to kick her heels against her high chair so hard, and everybody would comment on it. But we just thought, well, she doesn't seem to mind it. It's fine. And then there were times like she would hit her head and cry or do something that would make us think she could feel pain. But really looking back, we started to realize she probably does not feel pain. And so I took her to the pediatrician, and it was a very difficult conversation, honestly. And I sat her down and I said, I know this is crazy, but I don't think this child feels pain. She looked at me for a minute and she went out. If she was a PA, and she went out and got her attending. He came in with his car keys and she came in with a needle. The physician dangled his car keys, and she was a baby, so she was excited about the car keys. And meanwhile, the physician's assistant was poking at Grace all up and down her arms and legs, even drew blood in places, and Grace didn't notice that at all. So we had confirmation right there that Grace did not feel pain. And that started a whole new journey. Went to neurology, and they said, and she wasn't able to walk at this point. She was 18 months, 20 months old or so, and was not able to walk independently. And I said, this is a problem, right? And they said, well, people need 3 things to be able to walk. They need sensation, they need the vestibular inner ear sense, and they need vision. And as long as people have 2 of those 3 things, they usually can walk. And we didn't know she was missing 2 of those at that time. We knew she was missing the sensation, but we did not know about her vision loss. We found out about that when she was about 2.5 years old. We were sitting in her room. It was a dark room, and she and her brother and my husband and I were all sitting together on the floor. There was a nightlight. It wasn't that dark. And her milk was in front of her on the floor, and she couldn't find it. She was wildly searching, could not realize where her milk was. So we thought, well, maybe she's just got night blindness. No big deal, right? People are night blind. Turns out it's a big deal when it's a 2-year-old. And so we saw Dr. McCourt for the first time when Grace was about 2.5, and she did an ERG and found out at that time Grace had about 10% of her vision remaining, all centrally. So she had pinhole vision in both of her eyes. And meanwhile, Grace continued to bite her fingers, and we were dealing with infections all the time. She was hospitalized about 4 times a year for the first several years of her life, all for infections. She had a kidney infection at one point that the doctor, did this to her back, and she didn't feel it. She didn't notice. I've never heard of anyone having a painless kidney infection, but here we are. So, we kind of learned more about Grace over these years. And I found out, actually 3 different people sent me an article from the New York Times about a girl named Ashlyn Blocker. And Ashlyn didn't feel pain. And there were pictures of Ashlyn in the article that could have been Grace, with her hands wrapped up and just trying to keep her from injuring herself. And through that article, I found a group of parents and caregivers that was just life-changing, instrumental in how we dealt with Grace. So at that point, we were thinking, well, we'll get through it. When she gets older, we'll teach her to spot her own injuries. We'll teach her to see her own wounds and treat her own wounds. And then we found out that she was blind, and it was just absolutely devastating.
I'm sure. And so when did somebody finally sequence her and tell you what the problem was?
We did all sorts of things. We tried our best. And we saw a specialist in New York, actually, who specialized in people with dysautonomia. And she said, well, Grace's autonomic nervous system isn't working correctly, but she's not like these other kids with dysautonomia. And she's actually the first one that suggested looking into posterior column ataxia with retinitis pigmentosa, which is the name of the disorder caused by the feline leukemia variant. And so when we got back to Colorado, they sequenced just for that mutation, and the results were inconclusive. She had one gene that was definitely mutated and one that appeared normal, so they weren't able to figure it out. When she was older, though, she was about 5, I think, we had an opportunity to do a research study through Xenon Pharmaceuticals, and they did whole genome sequencing, or maybe whole exome sequencing, and they found that she actually did have 2 mutated copies of that gene. Just one was harder to see because it was a different kind of mutation.
Yeah. So roughly 5 years of searching, having well-meaning people not come up with a solution. Meanwhile, she gets worse and worse.
Right.
And you and your family become more and more desperate.
Sure. And at that point, it was just all about survival, all about symptom control. We needed to be able to keep her out of the hospital and keep her infections under control. And so that was what we were focused on. But it definitely was devastating to know that her vision was just getting worse the whole time we were trying to survive.
Yeah. So to just categorize all of this, she has a mutation in this gene that manages heme. And because of that, she can't generate the kind of energy she should for some important cells. And she also probably has iron toxicity in some of those cells. As a result, some critical parts of her brain don't function right. One of them is pain sensation. And so she has an extremely dangerous and disabling situation in which if you can't feel pain, you are going to hurt yourself, and you're going to do it all the time. And naturally, since she can't feel things, she's not going to be able to stand and walk and do all that. And if she can't see, she can't do any of that anyway. And so then you learn that she's nearly blind.
Yeah.
And all of that comes together when she's 5.
Yeah.
So
she wants to raise her hand to tell you that
She can stand and she can walk.
Grace can stand and walk. It took a lot longer for her to learn, but she had a lot of good people helping her in her early years. So she, unlike a lot of people with her disease, she is able to walk. She's never had the sensation, so she didn't know what she was missing. So when she learned to self-accommodate, she was able to learn to walk.
I still use a wheelchair at school, but I can walk.
So Grace, how did you teach yourself to walk?
I don't know. I was 3 years old.
Well, you were pretty smart if you taught yourself to walk when you were nearly blind and had your mutation. But so how do you manage walking today?
Well, I just get up, okay, and I'm 1 foot forward, and then the
She's smart, all right.
I met your kind. I met your kind. I am one of your kind. A real smart aleck. I got it. Okay.
She has a seeing eye mom. So when we're out and about, I help her. I typically am her guide mom. At school, she uses a wheelchair. It's a lot safer for her. Her school is enormous also, so it helps her conserve energy. And otherwise, like in our house, she knows her way around our house. You don't need assistive devices in your own environment, typically.
Yeah.
Grace, how do you avoid hurting yourself these days?
I don't.
She hurts herself all the time, sometimes intentionally, often not.
But I do have a weird talent for not hitting my head when I fall.
That's great.
It's a weird talent, but I figured out how to not hit my head when I fall.
Well, that shows a lot of skill. So, okay. So she continues to have significant issues with self-induced injury of one form or another.
Well, it's partly my little brother's fault. He lays in the middle of the floor
trips you, no doubt. Yeah. Yeah. I always would blame little brother as much as you can. That's important to do. It's good family dynamics.
It's important to do. I mean, he's 7. He needs an ego check.
Yeah, he needs it. I'm sure. It's good big sistering. That's good. So, so back to basics. This mutation causes brain cells that are needed for pain sensation and other functions to fail. It also causes retinal cells that you have to have for vision to fail. And then n-Lorem enters the picture when?
Yeah, that's a great question because it was about 2018 or 2019 that Dr. McCourt approached us with an idea of creating a specialized medication for Grace. And she started the ball rolling, and then COVID hit. And everything stopped for a couple of years with COVID. At some point, when it picked back up again, Dr. McCourt was in contact with n-Lorem. She found out about you and reached out to you and arranged all of the logistical parts of this. We could not have done this without Dr. McCourt. She's been a good advocate for Grace, and we really appreciate everything she's done.
Yeah. Yeah, she's an ophthalmologist.
Yes. Yep.
No.
And
it's difficult to spell, by the way. It has too many H's.
Yeah, I still fail. I call the ophthalmology division of the FDA the eye division. It's simpler and just fewer letters, and it's just better. But of course, I founded n-Lorem in January of 2020, and I recall that we have a process that we use to decide whether it's appropriate to treat a patient with an experimental ASO. That ultimately culminates in a very formal presentation to a committee we call the Access to Treatment Committee, which is made up of a broad array of experts in medicine and ASO technology and other things. And there were lengthy discussions about what to do first.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, the decision was saber vision, because that was, if she lost her vision fully, she had no chance to protect herself from self-injury, and she would lose a lot of other function. And so we decided to treat her eyes.
And we actually had a lot of conversations about this with her Colorado treatment team also. She has done tremendous damage to her body. When she was little, she used to do things like jump up and down on concrete on her knees to punish when she was mad at us. She used to twist her ankles all the time.
Yes,
her hands are very damaged. And if we tried to give her the sensation of pain, it would be cruel. She has done so much damage that she would be in chronic, unbearable pain if we gave that back to her. We felt like it was not nice.
Not in her interest.
No, it doesn't seem like it's the right thing to do for her. It is bad to not feel pain, and it causes all sorts of problems. But at this point, giving it back to her feels like it would cause even more problems, and it would make her life harder. If we had started this when she was a baby, it'd be different.
Yeah, I wish we had, and
I do too.
You and Grace wish we had too, but well, we are doing hard work to help Grace, and
we appreciate it.
And well, it's my privilege, but I think the story of that horrible decision making is very important for our audience to hear, because we confront these kinds of situations with our patients all the time, and I'm very comfortable that the right decision was made for Grace, and in due course, Grace will be able to make her own decisions and about what's best.
Join us for the 2025 n-Lorem Nano Rare Patient Colloquium, hosted by Biogen this October 20th and 21st in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Connect with members of the NanoRare community as we explore the latest from the Foundation, share insights from treated patients, feature expert-led panel discussions, and more. Supporters, physicians, scientists, and patients and their families will come together for 2 inspiring days of learning, connection, and hope. Don't miss it. Register now to attend in person or virtually at n-Lorem.org.
This episode of the n-Lorem Patient Empowerment Program podcast is proudly sponsored by Hanjin Biotech. With more than 26 years of experience in the nucleic acid industry, Hanjin is a specialized CDMO and raw material supplier committed to providing high-quality and high-value products and services with the best-in-class lead times.
We began then treating her eyes. We made an ASO that was specific for Grace's mutation to correct the mutation. And we chose to treat what was the worst eye first.
Yeah.
For safety. We didn't want to risk her losing any vision in her good eye.
That's right.
And so
She's saying it's still the worst eye.
yeah, well, sadly, I don't think we're going to make the eyesight better. But our job, the best that we can do, and it's frustrating, is prevent the eyesight from getting worse.
That's huge, though, because any vision is better than no vision. And especially when she has these other disabling conditions, if we can even stabilize her vision loss. When we first met Dr. McCourt, she estimated that Grace would be completely blind by the time she was 20.
Yeah.
And I think now we have a better trajectory because of n-Lorem.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about treating that first eye for a minute? Obviously you've got a lot on your mind. And now we're going to subject Grace to an experimental medicine.
Right.
How did you manage that decision?
We've had to make she was 13 at the time, and she has strong opinions. But
I did have strong.
You still do. We have had a lot of times in her life when we've had to make terrible decisions, when we've had to decide, do we continue on this antibiotic that's giving her terrible side effects, or do we risk the infection worsening? Do we move forward with this or this? With the ASO, it was a happy choice. Because if we do nothing, she is going to lose the rest of her vision. And if we treat it, the very worst that could happen is what would already happen even if we didn't treat it. So it felt like a very easy decision to make, to opt to try this. It was exciting. It was something, it was hope. It was
Finally
something that we could hang our hats on that would help her, even if it doesn't give her, you can't, I always tell people you can't bring back the dead. And there's a lot of dead cells in her eyes. You can't bring those back. But if it keeps her from losing the vision, that is tremendously helpful. That is very important.
So Grace, you were 13 at the time. Were you involved in the conversations with your family?
I would have been involved in the conversation if I was 5.
Yeah, I get that.
I wouldn't have let them let me in the conversation. I'm a very overdramatic person.
She was involved, and she had some reservations. She felt really nervous about it. And considering that the method of treatment is an injection in your eye, that was scary for her. I can say pretty confidently that would scare me too, if it were my eye.
Especially if you're having that treatment because you are going blind and you have lost a lot of your sight.
Right.
So how's it gone?
It's going pretty well. It is hard for us to tell because Grace really doesn't have a lot of vision remaining. She really is pretty blind. but it seems like it has been stable since we've started the injections. It seems like it has not worsened, which is great. That's perfect. That's what we asked for.
And of course, the various tests that are being done by Dr. McCourt confirm all that. So
Right. I mean, to be fair, though, Grace memorized the vision charts, so.
To be fair.
yeah, well, that's cheating, but I
That is not cheating. When they show it to you multiple times, you end up memorizing it on accident.
yeah, they get what they deserve. That's right. They should change that vision chart on you and make you learn a new one.
I know.
But you still just have central vision, right, Grace? I mean, you still have central vision only. Your peripheral vision is not there for you.
Distant.
Show him what she does this thing where she
don't make me.
Okay. Well, it's about like this. If she does that, because she can compensate many times. She can compensate a little bit for the periphery.
Just by moving your eyes and your head a little bit. Yeah. Again, it's amazing how one can compensate for all kinds of losses, right? And Grace has done that very, very well.
And I think this sounds strange to say that it's an advantage that she was born at kind of the end point of this, but a lot of people don't have any symptoms until they're, young, 10 years old or teenagers. And then it just starts with a little bit of vision loss and progresses throughout their lifespan so that, by the time they're 30 or 50, they're pretty blind and can't walk. She, on the other hand, was born at almost the end point. And so she learned to compensate for that as she grew up. And I hate to say that it's a blessing because that doesn't sound right, but it isn't the worst.
If you want.
It helped her to be able to accommodate from her very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So, Grace, we go to school. Do you mostly use audiobooks, or how does that work?
Okay, so I have an Audible account, okay? And she buys me Audible credits. I know she's great. We love her. Anyway, so I read a lot.
She reads audiobooks at school. She has a human scribe.
At school, I have a human scribe. We love her.
She is awesome. She also
reads.
Yeah, she also helps Grace get around the school. But she, when Grace was littler, she did a lot of the voice to text and text readers and things. But now in high school, she can't keep up with the pace. Those tools have benefits, but they're very hard to use a lot of the times. And so in order to help her keep up with the pace of her schoolwork, she has a human reading and writing for her.
Yeah. Pushing me around. And then saying, do your work. And I'm like, I don't want to. And they're like, oh, tough.
Well, she sounds like a pretty hard case. It sounds like you've got
She's got a lot on her hands.
Yeah.
I know, but she loves me anyway.
We all love you.
I know. Shocking, really. I'm a very sassy person.
Well, it is shocking to me, but I understand it. So good. So where do we go from here? What are your hopes?
That I get more books.
I think just keeping up with what we're doing is enough. I know that the science of retinas and how to treat retinal problems is changing every day. And maybe by the time she's older, there will be a different treatment that can help her get more vision back. But for now, this is good. Yeah. This is helping. She is stable, stable-ish, and, able to keep up with, cognitively, she is not only all there, she's very, very bright. I've always wondered if, maybe some of those neurons that weren't going to visual cells were going to cognition because she is so smart. And so, we have hopes and dreams for her future. She wants to be a neurobiologist.
Or a lawyer. That's my backup.
Or a lawyer.
Well, neurobiologist, I think, is probably something I'd prefer, but that's neither here nor there. And if you're a lawyer, all you do is read. But okay.
Right.
But,
No,
Right.
boring books about the law.
so once again, Grace is afflicted, but she has all kinds of positives that can compensate for that. And if we can keep her vision where it is, that makes for a much richer and better life. Has Grace had any side effects from the medicine?
No.
Go ahead.
So when the medicine, we think, because we can't exactly prove this for some reason, that when they're injecting my eyes, the medicine hurts the eye, not the needle. Because when I wake up, I'm in a lot of pain. And by a lot of pain, I mean a lot of pain.
And for a kid that doesn't feel pain, it's kind of a misnomer to say she doesn't feel pain. She has some sensation,
No, it's good.
but it is less than most people. And she can feel the skin on her face and torso better than probably anywhere else. But when she's waking up from these eye injections, and we're doing them under anesthesia because that is her preference, and we will always allow her to make that call.
I don't want to get stabbed in the eye while I'm awake.
But when she's waking up, she is in tremendous pain. She's closing her eyes, crying, and really, kind of thrashing. So that has been a challenge, but it goes away fast. It goes away usually by that evening. She doesn't, we'll give her medicine at the hospital, and then by that evening she's okay. Which is why we think maybe it's the medicine itself. Maybe it just hurts when they inject it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange because we've now have a lot of experience injecting patients into the eye, and of course your eye doesn't have pain receptors to speak of, and I don't think any patient I've ever heard about ever had that complaint. So that's I think that's a really important observation that I want to think about. Well, she may be reacting to pressure, I suppose. But if there were pain, it would almost certainly be inflammation. And if there were inflammation, her vision would get worse for a bit. And that hasn't happened. So,
if you mean worse for a bit, like I'm crying and everything's blurry, then it does for a second.
But you have to remember also that she doesn't have a frame of reference.
It's true. It's great.
You and I deal with minor scratches and insults every day, and we don't even really notice them. And so when she has something that's painful, it can be something that I would consider a very mild thing, and it's excruciating for her. Whereas she can, that she can injure her bones, have broken bones that are painless, but a little scratch on the face is absolutely traumatizing for her.
Yeah, that's really, I hadn't thought about that. That there's no reference for what is pain and then how 1 to 10, who knows, right?
Right, exactly.
Sad.
And, one man's 7 could be another man's 2 also. You just never know.
Yeah, you're
Our Grace's would be a 0 or a 10, but not.
Yeah, that is kind of how it works. Yeah. When we used to, she, we know she doesn't really feel internal organ pain. She doesn't really feel broken bones. She'll feel them. She'll say it tickles sometimes or it tingles, but never, she'll say, "Ow, that hurts," in kind of that tone of voice where I'd be screaming.
Yeah.
But when I was helping her get dressed when she was younger, if I would accidentally scratch her as I was pulling up her pants, it'd be the worst pain she's ever felt in her life. And so that kind of minor, scrape is nothing for someone who does feel pain, but it's excruciating for her.
Wow. Well, this is it's very nice to meet both of you, and I think you're coming to the colloquium, so we'll get a chance to say hi there, and that'll be.
We're excited.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an exciting meeting because we're going to talk about all the things that we're learning, and how important what we're learning is, and And of course, we get to share the things that bring us the most joy, which is to see our patients doing better.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked that either of you think it would be important to tell folks?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're just, we just really want to say thank you. Thank you to you and to n-Lorem for doing this for her. I guess one question I have, these are ASOs, they're patient specific. What is the big picture plan to make this available to a broader health community? How would you make something like this available for someone who, what's the end goal for developing ASOs?
Well, ASOs are developed commercially every day. There are 18 different ASOs that have been approved for commercial use and many more coming. So that ASOs are going to take their place in the mainstream of medicine here in the next few years. And I think all of the community is excited about that because they're unique drugs. It's true n-Lorem mutations. At the moment, there is no commercial path. There's one of the things that we wanted to do with n-Lorem. It's easy to talk about long-term solutions, but I felt that what we had to do was try to help the patients who needed help today. And then that would drive long-term solutions more effectively. And I think that's turned out to be true. So as we do this, we've learned pretty quickly that what we think is nano-rare is usually not. And so in that case, we find commercial partners to develop. And we are very picky. We want commercial partners that are going to be responsible and treat patients appropriately. And there is a significant movement afoot to try to find a solution for a commercial path for this truly rare patient population. I think it's still early days in that, and so we don't know. But, our big challenge today is that demand has been so great. I mean, we're now at, I think, 193 patients that we've accepted. And if you put it in crass financial terms, multiply that by roughly 1 million, and that's the bill that we have to raise. And we've been amazed at the support that we've gotten. But it hasn't kept up with the demand. And we are having the best year ever in raising money this year, but we still have to raise a lot more. So I think the long-term solution is not clear yet. I think we have partial solutions to many situations, and we're creating the information that will drive solutions because you can't hide from the fact that we can help patients. And so as that momentum builds, I think there will be more holistic solutions. And we intend to participate aggressively in that, but I think it's a little difficult to predict exactly how that end game will come. What I think is important is that there's a movement afoot and that there is an end game that people are working toward that will change the whole picture here. Would not have happened if we hadn't helped patients like Grace. And so Grace is a pioneer patient and you're a pioneer family. And I think the lessons that we're learning are going to introduce the next revolution in medicine, where we no longer focus on symptoms and focus on cause and maintain health rather than try to treat symptoms. And that's coming. And patients like Grace will help us get there. And that's I think, the long-term impact of Grace and patients like her.
She's raising her hand to ask a question like a good student.
Okay, Grace.
I do that. Anyway, you were talking about money. And I was like, well, I'm a good singer. I could, fundraise or something.
She is a really good singer. Maybe she could do a benefit concert.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that'd be great. What's your favorite kind of music?
A basic white girl.
She likes Billie Eilish. She likes
Taylor
Swift.
Tate McRae, Sabrina Carpenter, Conan Gray.
Yeah. But she is a very good singer.
Another day bleeds into nightfall, and you're not here to get me through it all. I let my guard down, and then you pulled the rug. I was getting caught in your being someone you love.
Oh, way cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for helping rare patients, because, one thing you learn is that although it's not really, there aren't very many people with Grace's rare disease, there are a whole lot of people with rare diseases. And research dollars tend to go to groups with, a lot of people. For example, chronic pain is a huge problem. And so research dollars are only now going to people who don't feel pain, so that they can try to channel that to help people who do, instead of trying to help the people that don't feel pain have a better quality of life. So I really greatly, from the heart, appreciate that you care about the individuals and are trying to make their lives better.
Patient populations are made up of individuals.
That's right.
The indivisible unit of goodness is the individual. And of course, our healthcare systems were created to deal with large diseases. We didn't know genetic diseases existed when the healthcare systems were created. And so that we are able to do what we do today is truly a set of miracles of science. And we're all fortunate to be able to participate in those miracles. And so, once again, it's a privilege to do what we do. And it's a great pleasure to meet you and Grace, and look forward to saying hi in Boston. And Grace, you're going to have to be, reasonably well behaved, but you can do pretty much what you want. Okay.
It's hard to rein her in, also.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Can't tame me. I'm very strong-willed.
I figured.
Tried to make me go there in time.
Well, yeah. She is strong-willed and sassy and fun and smart and an excellent musician.
Well, look forward to hearing her play or sing.
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah.
Okay.
She'll have to sing a song while we're there.
I could get the fraternal triplet moment.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us today. We really appreciate it. And we very much do appreciate the chance to preserve her remaining vision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the best to both of you, and we look forward to seeing you in Boston here in a couple of months. Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah, like this. Bye-bye.
n-Lorem is a nonprofit committed to discovering and providing personalized experimental treatments for free, for life, to patients with genetic diseases that affect 1 to 30 patients worldwide, referred to by n-Lorem as nano-rare. Many of these patients progress and die without ever achieving a diagnosis. This is where n-Lorem comes in. They do the impossible by providing hope, and for those that they can help, free lifetime treatment. For more information about n-Lorem or today's episode, visit n-Lorem.org. Any questions can be sent into podcast@n-Lorem.org. Search n-Lorem on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook to connect with us. This video is hosted by Dr. Stan Crook and produced with the help of the following professionals. Thank you for watching.